Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we are diving into a topic that sits right at the intersection of heavy industry, environmental stewardship, and, quite frankly, hard-hitting financial strategy. We're going to translate a highly technical sustainability metric, specifically the SASB standard known as RTIG 410A.4, into a massive strategic advantage for anyone involved in industrial machinery and goods. If you've ever looked at sustainability reporting and wondered, how do we actually account for heavy-duty diesel emissions in a way that investors truly care about, well, you are in exactly the right place. Let's get right into it.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the emissions imperative. Second, we're decoding the 4 engine categories. Third, calculating sales-weighted emissions. And finally, number 4, strategic risk management.
Okay, part 1, the emissions imperative, managing regulatory and environmental risks. Tracking these specific diesel emissions, it is absolutely no longer just a box-ticking exercise. It's a massive financial materiality issue for the entire industrial machinery sector. According to the SASB topic summary, and I quote, regulations restricting emissions are increasing the demand for energy-efficient and lower-emission products. And that hits the nail on the head, right? Because customer preferences are shifting globally and jurisdictional regulations are tightening up fast. So entities that develop energy-efficient, lower-emission products are perfectly positioned to capture expanding market share, reduce their regulatory risk, and really boost their overall brand value.
And that brings us to the precise alphanumeric code we're tackling today. Metric RTGIG 410A.4. What does it actually mean? Well, it's defined as the sales-weighted average emissions of nitrogen oxides, which we call NOx, and particulate matter, or PM. Basically, the standard requires tracking the dual threat of these two very specific pollutants across distinct diesel engine product categories. It's not just looking at broad greenhouse gases. No, it's specifically zeroing in on NOx and PM emissions in the use phase of these heavy-duty machines. Moving on to Section 2, decoding the 4 categories.
So if you look within the broader SASB framework for industrial machinery and goods, metric RTIG 410A.4 is nested right under the fuel economy and emissions in use phase topic. It's a quantitative metric, meaning it's all about the hard numbers, and it sits directly alongside other fuel efficiency metrics for medium and heavy-duty vehicles, non-road equipment, and stationary generators.
Now, the standard requires you to break down this emissions data into 4 specific diesel engine categories, based on applicable jurisdictional laws. These are marine diesel engines, locomotive diesel engines, on-road medium and heavy-duty engines, and other non-road diesel engines. Listen, we aren't talking about your average pickup truck here. These are massive machines moving the global economy. That other non-road category alone covers things like excavators, farm tractors, heavy forklifts, airport ground service equipment, and huge industrial utility generators. It's a big deal.
Within those 4 categories, reporting entities have to conceptually and mathematically separate the 2 distinct types of emissions we mentioned, nitrogen oxides on one hand and particulate matter on the other. You can't just lump all the bad air together into a single metric. It doesn't work that way. By separating NOx and PM, the standard gives investors a super high contrast view of exactly which regulatory risks a company's product line might be exposed to. Why? Because different jurisdictions often have highly specific and completely separate targets for reducing nitrogen oxides versus particulate matter.
All right, let's get into the math. Section 3, calculating sales-weighted emissions.
So the unit of measure here is grams per kilojoule, or GKJ. Let me put on my translator hat for a second to explain why this matters. ESG analysts and investors care deeply about this baseline data. A kilojoule is simply a measure of work or energy output, right? And the grams represent the physical amount of NOx or PM released to produce that output. Doing it this way allows for a true apples-to-apples comparison between, say, massive marine diesel engines and smaller utility generators across entirely different companies' portfolios.
Here is the methodical, 2-step calculation process dictated by the standard. Step 1. Calculate the average emissions of NOx and PM for the engines, measured in those grams per kilojoule. Step 2. Weight these emissions by the number of each unit sold during the reporting period. I can't stress this enough. This sales-weighted approach is absolutely vital. It means the company can't just boast about a single, hyper-clean prototype engine if they're still out there selling tens of thousands of older, dirtier models. The final metric reflects the actual reality of what is entering the market and contributing to the fleet's overall environmental impact.
Let's wrap things up with Section 4, strategic risk management.
The standard doesn't just ask for the raw numbers.
It includes a specific note requiring entities to discuss how they actually manage fleet fuel economy and emissions risks, as well as the opportunities. You must detail specific qualitative disclosures regarding your forward-looking strategies. This means discussing the improvements being made to existing products, the introduction of entirely new technologies, and dedicated R&D efforts into advanced tech. On top of that, the standard really highlights the importance of disclosing strategic partnerships, whether that's collaborating with industry peers, academic institutions, or even governmental customers, to innovate and manage these fleet emissions down over time.
Alongside those management strategies, entities have to transparently report on their regulatory readiness. The SASB standard explicitly states that entities must share the calculation methods they used. Even more critically, the entity has to disclose if any of its products currently fail to meet existing emission standards established in applicable jurisdictional laws. And finally, companies should discuss their progress toward and readiness for future jurisdictional emission standards that could affect their products. It paints a complete picture of where the company stands today and exactly how prepared it is for the regulations of tomorrow.
So look at what we've covered today. We've gone from the macro imperative of global emissions, drilled down into the strict math of grams per kilojoule, and zoomed right back out to long-term R&D strategy. Whether you're building locomotives, tractors, or marine engines, the data you report under RTIG 410A-410 tells a vivid story about your company's future viability. I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to consider. Based on the sales-weighted math we explored today, is your fleet truly ready for tomorrow's jurisdictional emission standards? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.